Howdy, my name is G's Larry. Ever since I've started my YouTube channel, this is a question that I've often asked myself over and over again, and it wasn't until just recently that I got around to actually putting my foot down and looking into this. Before I get into all the details and stuff, this is a completely different style of video for me, so if you enjoy the video, let me know in the comments and give me a thumbs up, and even consider subscribing. It's free and helps out a lot. With that, enjoy the video. By the way, guys, I didn't know what to put as my footage, so I panicked and did a speedrun of me trying to blow myself up in the nether, so enjoy that too. A long, long time ago, in a country far, far away, back when the death penalty was a all too common form of punishment, there was a law that stated if someone was sentenced to death, whether it was gallows or electric chair or whatever, and they managed to survive said death penalty, then they took that as a sign from God that they shouldn't die yet. It wasn't their time, and sometimes they even took it as they were innocent. So their charges were dropped, they were fully acquitted, and they moved on like nothing ever happened. Now in that time there was a train conductor, and he was driving his train one sunny afternoon in the farmlands of this country, driving through the fields and the forests along a stretch of track that was particularly curvy, when he got a little bit too excited. He was driving a passenger train full of nearly 50 people. The exact number is a little bit fuzzy, but it was estimated to be about between the ranges of 45 to 47 people. But this train conductor started driving, got a little bit too excited, and he started going a little bit too fast. He got a little bit too into it. And when he went around a particularly sharp corner for a train, he was going so fast that when he hit a rock that was on the track, it messed up the train, and the train derailed. It derailed and it slid, it flipped, and it slid sideways into the trees, and a few of the cars actually blew up. Most of them caught fire, and everybody died. All the passengers, nearly 50 of the passengers passed away. But the train conductor survived. I don't know how he managed it, but he managed to survive with nearly no injuries, just a few bumps and bruises. Now, when the authorities arrived on scene and figured out what happened, they arrested the train conductor and charged him with negligible driving. It was his fault that he was driving it so fast that the train crashed. He was recklessly driving, and he had inadvertently caused the deaths of nearly 50 civilians. Now, this was a huge deal, and remember, this was back in the olden days when the death penalty was all too common. And so, when the authorities arrested him, they gave him a quick trial, and the judge found him guilty and sentenced him to death via the electric chair. Now, the next morning, as was customary, the train conductor was allowed one final meal. But the train conductor said he wasn't very hungry, so he asked for one singular banana. Now, the sheriff and the judge was very confused by this, but they were like, alright, give the man his banana. So they gave him his banana, he ate his potassium, and then they strapped him in to the electric chair. The executioner wasted no time in flipping the switch, and sparks flew, electricity arced, smoke billowed, and for a few minutes they left the chair on buzzing and sparking. But when they flipped the switch off finally and let the smoke thin and fade, they stared at amazement at the train conductor, perfectly fine, sitting in the chair, staring right back at them. He didn't have a singed hair on his entire body, and his clothes were still fully intact. Nobody in the room had any explanation to how this guy survived, and yet here he was, not even harmed. His hair was a little messy, but that's all. That's it. And so, as was customary in this time in this time period, they took it as a sign from God that he should not be blamed for this accident. And because of that, they acquitted him of all his charges and they gave him his train license back. So then he went back to working as a train conductor like nothing had ever happened. Now a year or two went by with no incident whatsoever. But then he started driving on that same track of land again. And again, he started driving a little bit too fast, got a little bit too reckless, and again, the train derailed, flipped, crashed. Most of the cars caught fire yet again. And when authorities arrived on scene, they found all 100 passengers had passed away. The only survivor was a train conductor. The very same train conductor that had caused a crash a year ago. The authorities were astounded that this guy had survived again, but they were appalled that he had caused another crash. They figured that he would have learned at least to not drive so recklessly. And so this time, they barely even gave him a trial, and they just said, "We're going to strap you into the electric chair. What's your final meal?" Well, the train conductor said, "Well, I am a little bit hungry, so can I have 2 bananas?" Well, the sheriff was like, "Well, that's a weird request, but as always, we are required by law to permit you this final meal." So they gave him 2 fresh, ripe bananas, and the train conductor happily indulged himself and ate them. Well, shortly after that, he was strapped back into the electric chair, and the executioner flipped the switch again. And again, sparks flew, electricity arcs, smoke billowed, filled the whole room. And when they switched the switch off, turned the chair off, he was fine again. Not a singed hair on his body. His clothes were fine. And this time, his hair was still neatly combed. Nobody in the room could understand why this guy was seemingly immune to electricity. But again, they took it as a sign from God that he should not be blamed for this accident, and all his charges were dropped. He was fully acquitted, and again, they gave him his train driver's license back. 2 years later, the very same train conductor was driving a passenger train. This train carried about 150 people, and again, he started driving a little bit too fast. Again, he caused the train to derail, crashing, killing every single passenger aboard the plane. There was one survivor, and that survivor was the train conductor, who managed to get out with just a few bumps and bruises and a cut on his right arm. Now, when the authorities arrived at the scene and saw who was driving the train, who had caused the accident, they were furious. They were so furious that they locked the train conductor up in handcuffs, dragged him straight to the judge's house, and gave him a private trial right there. It only lasted a few minutes, and the judge again sentenced him to death and gave him one final meal request. The train conductor nodded his head grimly, knowing that surely there was no way he could survive again, and he asked for 3 bananas as his final meal. The judge relented, and he brought his 3 bananas, and then within 24 hours of the crash, he was strapped again into the electric chair, and again the flip was switched. They left it on for twice as long as they normally did. The electricity was sparking, the light started flickering, smoke filled the entire room so they couldn't even see, but when they turned the chair off, the train conductor was again fine. He was barely even hurt. His clothes were smoking a little, but he wasn't burnt, his hair wasn't even singed, and he was perfectly fine. Now again, they took this as a sign from God that he shouldn't be blamed for the accident, and they fully acquitted him, gave his trainer's license back, and he went back to driving trains. 2 weeks later, not even a full month since his last crash, he was driving again, driving a train that was holding 200 passengers, and again, he was driving recklessly, and he caused the train to crash. every single one of the passengers passed away, and the authorities arrived on scene, found the only survival as that one train conductor, and they were so mad they didn't even give him a trial. They dragged him straight to the electric chair, didn't give him a meal request, and strapped him in, double checking every single strap, triple checking all the straps, making sure that there was no way that he could survive this one. He shouldn't be alive at this point. So they flipped the switch. And this time they didn't leave it going for 10 minutes. They didn't leave it going for 20 minutes. They left it going for 3 hours. They left the room. When they came back, the lights had blown from the amount of electricity. They couldn't see a foot in front of them because the smoke was so thick. And the chair was smoking. Steam was rising off them. They turned the chair off before the whole building blew up from the amount of electricity in the room. And when the smoke finally cleared, the train conductor was sitting in the chair, alive. Not only alive, he was again completely unharmed. And the sheriff was like, "How'd you do this? How are you alive? We didn't even give you you didn't even eat the stupid bananas. How are you surviving?" The train conductor looked at him quizzically and said, "Bananas? What does bananas have to do with anything?" The sheriff said, "Well, I had assumed that the bananas somehow were causing you to survive. What else could have been how else could you have survived this?" Well, the train conductor started laughing then. He said, No. The bananas had nothing to do with it. I'm just a terrible conductor."